So today is October 1st, the month of horror, as some people would say, and the best way to start off the month of horror is by doing a horror ranking. So today, the Evil Dead movies. So when it came to my watch through of the Evil Dead franchise, I was completely fresh. I have never seen any of the movies. I didn't know anything except for the fact that they're based in a cabin in the woods. Bruce Campbell is the star, and the director is Sam Raimi. Other than that, I knew nothing about these movies, so I went in completely fresh. I didn't know if some people loved the first, hate the rest of them. If they loved the second, hate the other ones. Didn't like the reboot, loved the reboot. I knew nothing about it, so I went this completely fresh. So this is my ranking of all four of the Evil Dead movies, with starting with number 4. And then coming in number 4, I do have the Evil Dead 2. Now, even though this is coming in the last place, I do really enjoy this movie. It's got some stuff I really enjoy. All these movies I have a lot of fun with, but one has to come in at the bottom, and that is the Evil Dead 2. The main elements of why it comes in at the bottom is the first act is very reminiscent of the first movie. The first act doesn't really have anything original. It kind of baffles me why Ash would ever even go back to a cabin in the woods, because we all know what happened in the first movie. I don't know why he'd go back to that scenario again. But after his girlfriend gets possessed and everything, and his hand gets possessed, I love the scene when he chops off his hand with a chainsaw. Absolutely brilliant, bloody, loved all of that. But then the second act, it's Ash alone in the cabin, and they don't really know what to do. So there's a lot of slapstick comedy, and it's really goofy, this movie. It kind of, you see, the first movie is very horror. This is a horror and a comedy, and then Army of Darkness is just a comedy. But this movie, they didn't know where to really have kind of the mixture of the two, and I just think that all the slapstick, everything around it coming to life laughing, even though I found it funny, I just really didn't appreciate it in the Evil Dead 2. So I do have a lot of stuff I do enjoy about it. I just don't like the comedy aspects of this. I just think it's a bit over the top, and I just really didn't like it as much in this movie. And coming in number 3, I do have the Evil Dead, the very first one in the franchise, which actually I think is just called The Evil Dead, which this movie I really enjoyed. I was really taken back by the whole way this movie is kind of set up. I was expecting it to be a lot bigger, look a lot better, but the fact that it's very low budget, everything is practical effects, I think really lends this movie a lot more. The horror in this movie is by far the most horrific movie in the original trilogy. The characters in it are very forgettable. Besides Ash, who I think if this is all we got, I think they'd all be forgettable. But the fact that we get to see Ash in the Evil Dead 2, as well as Army of Darkness, those two movies make Ash a much more memorable character in this movie, even though he does not feel like the same Ash he does in the other two movies. As I said though, the horror in this movie is great. I think the tone, the horror, everything about it is great. The practical effects I really enjoy. It just kind of comes in at third place just because I prefer the other two ahead of this. But some stuff I love in this movie that I didn't really notice in the Evil Dead 2, as well as Army of Darkness, is just the sound design. I thought the sound design really stood out this movie. I thought it was great, especially when you see him hooking up his, I think it was his girlfriend or something. There's one of the kind of the deadites attached to the bed, and he's hooking up hooks, and you hear the hook, and it's just such a loud, it really overdoes everything else. I just think that whole sequence, not just that sequence, just the sound design of this movie alone, I love it. The camera design, when you see the camera, which is kind of generic for the Evil Dead kind of franchise, but the camera rushing behind him, you see Ash turn around screaming. I love that, and since it started with this movie, you're going to talk about it with this movie. And coming in number 2, I do have Army of Darkness. Now, I understand why some people wouldn't really have this at as high as they would if they didn't like it, because this is very much a comedy. It's not really a very horrific movie. This movie is primarily a comedy in my eyes, especially seeing scenes when you see evil Ash or you see the mini Ashes running around. All that is straight up comedy. Ash has multiple one-liners that all work really well for me. There's barely any gore. We get rid of the deadites we see in the first two, and we get some skeletons, which I just thought were such a great design. I love the fact that we're spending the time in, I want to say the 1600s, I can't really remember, but I love the atmosphere. I love that we're not in a cabin. That makes this movie stand out to me the most in this franchise. But as well, the comedy just worked really well for me. I think this franchise works really well as a comedy. That's why I started watching the Ash versus the Evil Dead, which is I've only seen the first episode now, but looking at it, it seems very much more like a comedy show show than it does more of a horror show, and I'm really excited to continue with that because that's the version of Ash I love. This is the best version of Ash, I think, in this entire franchise. One of the funniest things I think about this movie is by the end of the movie, after everything he's gone through in the first movie, in the second movie, in the third movie, going back with a robotic hand to the shop. He thinks he can just go back to his normal life before all this. You see him in the shop, he's got the scars on his face, all the cuts, and he's got a robotic hand, and he thinks he can just go back to the way things are. I just thought that was just pretty fucking funny. And coming in number 1, I've got Evil Dead from 2013. Honestly, I was really surprised after finishing this and then wanting to put this at number 1 because I was surprised the fact that this is the remake and I have it above the rest of the franchise because usually that doesn't really happen often. But I just thought the Evil Dead was just fantastic. I thought all the practical effects looked absolutely amazing. I love that I was actually able to feel attached to these characters. Well, in particular, Mia and her brother. I can't remember her brother's name, but those two in particular, I felt very attached to. I wanted to see them survive this scenario. I was shocked to see how Mia's story actually ends. The fact that she becomes our final girl. Watching her throughout this movie, I really didn't think that's what was going to happen. And I love what her brother was able to do to bring her back. All of that worked phenomenally well for me. I love when she gets her arm chopped off the end, and she does it very much like Ash, but not a carbon copy of how Ash did it. I thought, as I said, this is the most goriest of all of the franchise. Like the scenes when the girl's literally in the bathroom, chewing on a knife, ripping her mouth apart, the nail gun scene, all of the nail gun scenes actually in particular, blowing up the house, all of it worked really, really good for me. One downside, the guy who read the book is an absolute fucking idiot. There's notes all over the book saying don't read it, and this man is meant to be an intelligent man from college, but yet he still reads the book. Like, what a fucking idiot. So that's my ranking of the Evil Dead franchise. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, click that subscribe button so you can see more horror content from me within the month of October. I'm going to be doing a ranking of the Chucky movies and probably a ranking of the It movies and hopefully even more. I just need to watch a few of these more movies to do a ranking of them. So if you want to see more of them in the month of October, click that subscribe button. And as always, thanks for watching.